The hum of machines echoed through the vast room. It was late in the night, and the normally bustling command center was quieter than usual. Only a handful of technicians were at their stations, each focused on their tasks. The air was thick with tension, an underlying sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Amidst the routine, one young technician was hard at work, her eyes fixed on a screen that few others paid attention to. Her name was Ava Carter. She had always been interested in the unknown, the mysterious signals that came from deep space. Most people dismissed them as random noise or interference from other ships, but not Ava. She had spent countless hours analyzing these transmissions, believing there was something more out there. Her dedication was unmatched, but tonight, it would finally pay off. Ava had been working alone, scanning frequencies no one else bothered with. Most people in the command center had already gone home, but she couldn't tear herself away. There was something about the signal that was different, something she couldn't explain. It wasn't just static. It had a rhythm to it, a pattern that seemed too deliberate to be random. Her fingers danced across the keyboard as she adjusted the parameters of the scanner, narrowing her search. The signal was faint, like a whisper from another world, but it was there. She had found it, again. The same low-frequency transmission that had been repeating itself for weeks now. But this time, something was different. This time, the signal wasn't just a fragment of noise. It was a message. Ava's heart raced as she adjusted the settings to increase the clarity of the signal. Her eyes widened as she saw the first clear symbols begin to form on the screen. It was not a language she recognized, but it was structured, organized. Each symbol was like a puzzle piece, waiting to be put together. She quickly pulled up the translation software, but nothing came up. This was no ordinary language. It was alien. Still, Ava wasn't discouraged. She'd been waiting for something like this. She spent the next few hours working feverishly, trying to decode the symbols on her own. It was slow, painstaking work, but Ava was determined. The universe had sent her a message, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. As she worked, her mind raced. Who could be sending this signal? Was it a warning? An invitation? And why had it taken so long for anyone to notice it? She looked around the quiet room, wondering if anyone else would believe her when she finally cracked the code. She didn't want to be a lone voice in the dark, but she had a feeling this discovery would change everything. Hours passed, and by the time the sun began to rise, Ava had made a breakthrough. The symbols on the screen were starting to form coherent sentences. The message was still unclear, but the patterns were undeniable. She leaned closer to the screen, her heart pounding. Then, in a flash of understanding, the last few symbols fell into place. It was a message meant for someone, but not for humans. At least, not at first. The message read, "We are coming. Prepare yourselves." Ava's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the screen, her mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what she had just discovered. It was not a message of peace, nor was it a warning. It was a call, a summons. Someone or something was coming to Earth. But who? And why? Ava quickly compiled a report and sent it to her supervisor, Colonel Hayes. She had worked for years under his supervision, and although he wasn't always easy to impress, she knew this time would be different. This wasn't just another anomaly. It was real. There was a message out there, and it was directed at Earth. She had to act fast. As she waited for a response, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The signal was too powerful, too deliberate. It didn't feel like a casual broadcast. It felt like a command, a demand. She glanced around the empty command center, then at the screen once more. The message had been clear. We are coming. But who was we? And what did they want from Earth? Ava had no answers, only more questions. Colonel Hayes responded almost immediately. He had read the report. His first message was short and to the point. "Meet me in my office. Now." Ava's heart raced. She knew this was big, but she didn't expect him to react so urgently. She quickly gathered her things and headed to his office, her mind still racing with thoughts of the message. What had she uncovered? What would happen next? As she entered Hayes' office, he looked up from his desk, his face grim. He gestured for her to sit. "What do you think this is, Ava?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know, sir," Ava replied, trying to remain calm. "But I'm certain it's not a fluke. This signal, whatever it is, it's real. And it's meant for someone. We've been chosen." Ava could see the concern in Hayes' eyes. He didn't say it out loud, but she knew he was thinking what she was thinking. Earth had just received a message, an invitation or a challenge, from somewhere far beyond their understanding, and there was no turning back. "This changes everything," Hayes muttered under his breath. "We need to prepare." Ava nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Whatever came next, it was beyond their control now. The signal had been sent, and humanity had heard it. And in that moment, the future of Earth hung in the balance. The countdown had begun. The silence in Colonel Hayes' office was thick, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Ava sat across from him, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to grasp the enormity of what they had just uncovered. The screen that had shown the cryptic message now sat dark, but the words still lingered in her mind. "We are coming. Prepare yourselves." Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. The universe, or whoever had sent that signal, was on its way, and Earth had been put on notice. The question was, what did it mean for humanity? Hayes leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers as he stared at the ceiling. Ava noticed the weariness in his face. He had been in the military for decades, but this was different. This wasn't just a threat from another nation or a rogue faction of space pirates. This was something else entirely. "We need to contact the higher-ups," Hayes finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but Ava could hear the underlying tension. "This is bigger than anything we've dealt with before." Ava nodded, her mind racing. "Do you think the message is a warning? Or a challenge?" "At this point, it's hard to say," Hayes replied, his tone grim. "But I have a feeling we won't have long to find out." He stood up suddenly, pacing around the room. Ava remained seated, trying to absorb everything. The message had been clear, but the implications were anything but. Whoever or whatever had sent it was no friend of humanity. The line, "Prepare yourselves," implied a coming event. A confrontation, perhaps. "Colonel," Ava said, standing up as well, "what's our next step? How do we prepare?" "First, we get the message to Earth Command," Hayes said, his voice firm. "Then we see if this is isolated, or if anyone else has received it. The galaxy is a big place, but we're not alone in this universe. If someone is coming, they won't just be coming for us." His words struck a chord with Ava. They weren't just going to be prepared for whatever was coming. They had to understand who was coming and why. She couldn't shake the thought that the signal wasn't meant for humans at all. Ava watched as Hayes opened a communications channel to Earth Command, his fingers flying over the console. He gave a brief report of the situation, including the decoded message and its implications. Ava listened closely, knowing that once the higher-ups were involved, there would be no turning back. The military, the government, and possibly the entire planet would soon know what had happened here. The consequences of what they had just learned would be felt across the globe. But what if it wasn't just a matter of preparing for an invasion? What if this was a test? What if they were being called to prove humanity's worth? The idea sent a shiver down her spine. As the transmission ended, Colonel Hayes turned to her, his face drawn tight with concern. "We've alerted Earth Command. Now, we wait." "But what if we don't have time to wait?" Ava asked, a sudden urgency rising in her chest. Hayes paused, looking at her with a mix of frustration and understanding. "We'll have to make time. We've been chosen. Whether this is a test or an invasion, we're about to find out." Suddenly, the room's lights flickered, and an alarm blared to life. Both Ava and Hayes jumped at the sound, their hearts skipping a beat. The room filled with a loud, echoing voice. Warning. Unknown vessel detected in Earth's orbit. Immediate action required. Ava's stomach dropped. The signal. The message. It was all happening. Now, without a moment's hesitation, Colonel Hayes grabbed the phone on his desk, quickly dialing Earth Command's emergency line. Ava could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her as she watched him speak urgently into the receiver. This is Hayes. We've got a confirmed vessel in orbit. Yes, the signal. Yes, we're preparing. Get the fleet in position. Immediately. He slammed the phone down, his gaze locked on Ava. It's happening. They're here. The room seemed to close in on Ava as the implications sank in. The message had been a warning. And now, the unknown force that had sent it was on their doorstep. Humanity had been called to answer, and the response would define their future. Ava's mind raced. Was this the beginning of the end? Or was this an opportunity to prove to the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated? We need to prepare, Hayes said again, this time more urgently. Get the team together. We'll need all the intel we can gather before they arrive. Ava nodded quickly, the weight of her responsibilities crashing down on her. She had been the one to uncover the signal. She had found the message, and now it was up to her to help lead the way. But what could they do? They weren't ready. Not for something like this. She rushed out of Hayes' office, heading straight for the war room. The walls seemed to close in as she moved through the halls, and she could hear the frantic clamor of soldiers and technicians scrambling to prepare for the unknown. When she entered the war room, she found a large group already gathered. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew that something extraordinary was happening, but no one knew what to expect. Ava took her place at the front, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She glanced at the massive display screen that dominated the wall. It showed Earth's orbital map with a small blip marking the unknown vessel. We don't know who they are, she began, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. But we know they've heard our message. And now, they're coming. Her words hung in the air, thick with gravity. The galaxy was about to get a first-hand lesson in humanity's resolve, and Ava had no idea how this would end. The war room was silent, save for the constant beeping of the monitors. Everyone in the room was glued to their screens, watching the small blip on the map as it slowly approached Earth's orbit. The unknown vessel was getting closer, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Ava stood near the front of the room, her eyes darting back and forth between the screen and the people around her. Colonel Hayes was pacing behind her, his hands clasped behind his back. He had a look of determination, but Ava could see the underlying worry in his eyes. "We've got no time left," Hayes said, his voice grim. "They're nearly here." Ava nodded. It felt as though everything they had done up to this point had been leading to this moment. The signal, the preparation, the endless calculations, they were all for nothing if they couldn't act in time. "Any response from Earth Command yet?" Ava asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Hayes shook his head. "Nothing yet. They'd gone radio silent." Ava frowned. She had hoped Earth Command would have acted faster, but it was clear they were still trying to make sense of the situation. There was so much they didn't know. Who were these beings? What did they want? And most importantly, why had they chosen now to arrive? Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. The atmosphere grew heavier. Ava's heart raced. The unknown vessel was almost here. She could feel it in her bones, the impending doom or opportunity. Then, as if to answer her thoughts, the blip on the screen turned into a sharp signal. The vessel was in Earth's orbit. A message began flashing on the screen. "We are here. Ready yourselves. This is the beginning of the reckoning." The room fell completely silent. Ava's stomach tightened. What does that mean? She whispered to no one in particular. Colonel Hayes stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "It means they want something. And they're not going to wait for us to figure it out. We need to act now." Ava could feel the urgency in his voice. Time was running out, and Earth's fate might very well depend on what they did next. She turned back to the large screen. Should we send a communication? Try to talk to them? Hayes shook his head. They've already made it clear they don't want a conversation. They've arrived on our doorstep. They've made their intentions known. He turned toward the operations officer standing near the console. Prepare the fleet. Get all defensive systems ready. If we can't stop them with words, we'll stop them with force. Ava's heart sank. The words hung in the air like an impending storm. Was this the beginning of the end? Was this how humanity's story would be written? She didn't know, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. They had to be ready for whatever came next. Ava watched as the screens updated in real time, showing the fleet's defensive positions and movements. The military was mobilizing. Ships taking their positions, weapons systems coming online, shields raised. Everything was ready. But something about this felt different. The signal from the unknown vessel, the message they had received, it felt as if they weren't dealing with a conventional enemy. These beams weren't just coming for territory or resources. It was as if they were coming to make a statement. Colonel, Ava said, her voice steady but with an edge of concern. What if they're not here to destroy us? Hayes turned to her, his eyes locked onto hers. What if they're here to prove something? Something that could change the course of humanity's future? Ava swallowed hard. What if they're here to challenge us? There was a long pause. The weight of the question hung in the air like a cloud, and no one in the room had an answer. Suddenly, the comms system crackled, and Earth Command's voice came through, distorted and hurried. This is Earth Command. All forces on high alert. Repeat, all forces on high alert. We have confirmation of the alien vessel's entry into Earth's orbit. Prepare for possible hostile engagement. The situation is evolving rapidly. Stand by for further orders. Ava's heart pounded in her chest. They had their orders, but they still had so many questions. I don't like this, Hayes muttered under his breath. Something feels off. The comms officer cut in. Colonel, we've detected a change in the ship's trajectory. They're coming closer, fast. The room erupted into chaos. Ava barely had time to process the information before Hayes barked orders. People rushed to their stations, preparing for the worst. Ava's heart was racing, her mind whirling as she tried to keep up with everything happening around her. Prepare for battle, Hayes ordered. All personnel, get to your stations. This is it. Ava's pulse quickened. The time for thinking, for hoping, was over. There was no more waiting, no more strategizing. Humanity was facing its first true test. As the tension in the room reached its peak, the final words of the message flashed on the screen. Ready yourselves. The reckoning is upon you. Ava's mind raced. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a trial. Whoever, or whatever, these beings were, they were testing humanity. And humanity had no choice but to rise to the challenge. The galaxy was watching. The reckoning had begun. The room hummed with the sound of urgency as everyone scrambled to prepare. Ava's hands trembled slightly as she stood in front of the communication console. The message they had just received echoed in her mind. Ready yourselves. The reckoning is upon you. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. But from whom? And what did they want? Colonel Hayes stood at the front of the room, hands folded behind his back, his jaw set tight. His stoic appearance didn't mask the unease in his eyes. The time for waiting was over. The alien vessel was closing in on Earth with lightning speed, and they had no choice but to respond. We need to make contact with them, Ava said, her voice breaking through the tense atmosphere. We can't just wait for them to make the first move. We have to know what they want. Hayes glanced at her, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be considering her suggestion, but the weight of the situation was too heavy to ignore. They were already mobilizing the fleet. Would initiating communication really make a difference? At this point, Ava, Hayes began, his voice low. We can't afford to be passive. We've already given them an open invitation by waiting too long. Now it's time to show them we're ready." Ava nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of his words. They couldn't just keep waiting for answers. The galaxy had already seen their hesitation. Earth had to respond. "We have to make them understand that we're not easy prey," she added, her voice steady with determination. Hayes didn't argue. He motioned to the operations officer. "Initiate communication. See if we can get a response." The officer quickly tapped a few buttons on the console, his fingers moving with precision. The hum of the ship's communication system filled the air, and soon the room fell silent again. Seconds passed like hours. Ava held her breath. Would they answer? Would they make themselves known? Finally, the screen flickered to life, and a distorted image appeared. It was brief. Just a flash of alien symbols and static, but it was enough to send a chill through the room. It wasn't the first message they had hoped for. Ava felt a pang of frustration, but masked it quickly. She turned to Hayes. "We can't decipher that." Hayes clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare for a possible attack. We're done waiting." Ava knew what that meant. They were moving from diplomacy to defense. If this alien force wasn't willing to talk, then the only option left was to prepare for war. But as the fleet mobilized, something unexpected happened. The alien vessel slowed down, coming to a halt just beyond Earth's orbit. The tension in the room rose again. Was this a trick? Were they going to strike now, catching humanity off guard? Then, to everyone's surprise, another message flashed across the screen. "We don't come to destroy. We come to test." The words sent a ripple through the room. Ava blinked, unsure of what to make of it. "Test," she echoed. "What does that mean?" Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the screen. "A test," he muttered. "This isn't just a fight for survival. It's something more. A challenge." Ava's mind raced. What kind of test? Who were these beings, and why had they come to Earth? The comms officer spoke up. "The vessel's slowing down even more. They're waiting for something. A response, perhaps." Ava looked to Hayes, her mind working quickly. What should they do? The alien vessel wasn't attacking, but they were waiting for humanity to make the next move. Was this an opportunity or a trap? "Do we risk a direct engagement?" she asked, her voice firm but uncertain. Hayes turned toward her, his face showing signs of strain. "We're not sure what we're dealing with, Ava, but we don't back down." Before Ava could respond, the screen flickered again, and this time, the image was clearer. There were no alien faces, no clear form of communication, only an image of Earth's own fleet. The vessels hovered in the atmosphere, their sleek forms appearing fragile in comparison to the vastness of space. The message came next. "Show us what you can do. Prove your worth." The room was silent as everyone processed the implications. The aliens weren't attacking. They were observing, waiting for humanity to prove its strength. Ava's heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a test, a chance to show what humanity was truly capable of. "Prepare for a demonstration," Hayes said, his voice suddenly commanding. Ava felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a mere battle. It was a challenge that would define the future of Earth. The unknown alien forces wanted to see what humanity could do. Could they stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds? Could they rise to the occasion and prove that Earth wasn't just another conquered world in the galaxy? It was time for humanity to show the universe its strength. The tension in the command center was suffocating. Ava stood at the communications console, staring at the screen that still displayed the alien message. "Show us what you can do. Prove your worth." The words seemed to hang in the air, their weight growing heavier with each passing second. Colonel Hayes stood beside her, his hands gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles white. His face was grim, but there was a fire in his eyes, a fire that matched the determination burning in Ava's chest. This was no longer just about survival. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy, about proving they weren't just another species waiting to be conquered. "We can't afford to back down," Ava said quietly, more to herself than to Hayes. "We have to prove we're capable of standing up for ourselves. We have to show them we're not weak." Hayes nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving the screen. "The test will be more than just a fight. It's about our spirit, our resilience." His words were heavy, like he understood the true meaning of this challenge in a way that no one else did. The fleet was ready. Humanity had spent years preparing for something like this, even if they didn't know exactly what it was. The technology they had developed, though not the most advanced in the galaxy, was formidable. Their ships were tough, their weapons powerful. But more than that, they had something no other species could match: human determination. "We're going to engage," Hayes declared, turning to face the officers around him. "But we won't just fight. We'll show them the power of humanity's will to survive." Ava's heart raced as she stepped back to her station. The fleet had been mobilized, ready to launch at a moment's notice. But this wasn't just about firing weapons. It was about sending a message. The humans wouldn't just defend their home. They would fight for it. They would fight for their future. The command center fell silent as the fleet moved into position, lining up in formation just outside Earth's orbit. The alien vessel had not moved. Its hulking shape still loomed over them, watching, waiting. Ava took a deep breath. This was it. They were about to make their move. "Begin the display," Hayes ordered, his voice steady, calm despite the chaos in his mind. The screen blinked to life, and a map of Earth appeared. Their fleet was now in full view, a sign of humanity's resolve. Ava's fingers danced over the control panel as she initiated the first phase of the demonstration. The first move was subtle, a show of strength without aggression. The ships engaged their engines, creating a dazzling array of light as they moved in perfect synchronization. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about precision. Humanity was showing they could work together, that they could control their forces with deadly accuracy. Ava watched the alien ship. No movement. No response. Her breath hitched in her throat. Were they being judged right now? Was this enough? Then, suddenly, the screen flickered, and the alien vessel shifted. It moved ever so slightly, as if the very ship was watching, studying. It was almost as though it were evaluating their move, waiting for the next step. "Now," Hayes said, his voice almost a whisper, but filled with intensity. "Let's show them what we're really made of." Ava took another deep breath and activated the next sequence. This time, the fleet accelerated into a more aggressive formation, their ships locking into precise positions. As they moved, their weapons systems powered up, and the earth-shaking sound of the engines roared throughout the ship. But they didn't fire. Not yet. This wasn't a fight. This was a message. A signal to the galaxy that humanity had the strength to defend its own. The alien ship did not react immediately. There was only a haunting silence on the comms, as if both sides were holding their breath. Every member of the crew was waiting, watching. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then, as if on cue, a new message appeared on the screen, sent by the alien ship. The words were simple, but their meaning was clear. "Impressive, but it's not enough. Show us more." Ava's heart sank. It wasn't enough. They wanted more. The galaxy was watching, and the aliens had set the bar even higher. Humanity wasn't just being tested for its strength. They were being tested for their endurance, their resolve to push further than ever before. "Not enough," Ava whispered, feeling the weight of the challenge pressing in on her. "We've shown them our might, and it still isn't enough." "That's not the point, Ava," Hayes replied quietly, his voice calm but filled with steel. "They want to see if we can push past our limits, if we can go further than any other species, if we can overcome our fear, our doubt." Ava clenched her fists. The first phase had been impressive, but it wasn't enough. Humanity had to show them more, not just in power, but in heart. in the spirit that had carried them through countless wars, struggles, and challenges. The aliens wanted proof of that spirit. "Prepare for Phase 2, Ava said, her voice steady now. "We're not done yet." And so, with humanity's fate hanging in the balance, the fleet shifted into its next phase. This would be their ultimate test, the final demonstration of their worth. The question wasn't just whether they could survive. It was whether they could prove they were worthy of a place in the galaxy. The tension in the command center was palpable. Ava stood with her hands resting on the console, staring at the alien ship looming above them, its shadow casting a cold gloom over the fleet. The message they had received from the aliens had been clear, impressive. But it's not enough. The aliens were not impressed by humanity's first demonstration. Now, they wanted more. They wanted to see if humanity could push beyond what was thought possible. Ava's mind raced. What more could they show? They had already displayed their precision, their unity, their strength. But the aliens had asked for more, and humanity had no choice but to answer. Colonel Hayes stood beside her, his arms folded across his chest. His face was unreadable, but Ava could sense the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had led humanity's response up to this point, and now, the next move was on his shoulders. "Ava," Hayes said, his voice low but steady, "what's the next phase?" Ava hesitated for only a moment before she spoke, her voice resolute. "The next phase, we show them humanity's spirit. It's not just about power anymore. It's about will. It's about pushing beyond our limits." Hayes nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Then let's do it." The fleet was ready. It had been a long time since humanity had been pushed to its limits. But the aliens were making it clear, this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a test of everything humanity had ever believed in. It was a test of their resolve, their resourcefulness, and their ability to adapt. The stakes were higher than ever. As the command center buzzed with activity, Ava's mind flashed back to the early days of humanity's exploration. They had always been fighters, never backing down from a challenge. The history of humanity was filled with moments of hardship and triumph. The human spirit had always overcome, always found a way to rise. "We have to show them that," Ava said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. "We have to show them that humanity will never give up." Hayes watched her for a long moment before turning to the fleet commander. "Prepare the ships. We're going in. And this time, we don't hold back." The command center fell silent as everyone prepared for the final phase. There was no turning back now. The next move would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The alien response. The fleet moved into position. The alien ship still loomed above, but this time, its presence was different. It was as though the aliens were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The silence was deafening, and Ava could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Ready?" Hayes asked, his voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity. Ava nodded. "Ready." She gave the order. The ships began to move, not in perfect synchronization like before, but with a wild, unpredictable energy. It was chaotic, uncontrolled, but it was human. It was raw. It was a display of defiance. Humanity wasn't going to be held back. They were going to fight back, to stand up for themselves, no matter the cost. The ship's engines roared as they surged forward, weaving in and out of each other. The weapon systems hummed, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The humans weren't just showing their strength anymore. They were showing their unpredictability, their creativity, the way they could adapt on the fly when everything seemed impossible. As the fleet approached the alien ship, Ava saw the first signs of movement. The alien vessel seemed to shift, its lights flickering as though reacting to the human display. Ava's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. The alien ship unleashed a burst of energy, a powerful beam that shot toward the human fleet. It was a challenge, a test of their mettle. The beam was fast, unrelenting, But humanity was ready. Ava's voice cut through the chaos. Evade. Evade now. The ships swerved in unison, narrowly avoiding the beam. But this wasn't just about survival. This was about showing the aliens that humanity was more than capable of standing up to them. As the fleet regrouped, the humans responded. They fired their own weapons, sending bursts of energy toward the alien ship. The explosions lit up the void of space, each blast a symbol of humanity's defiance. The fleet surged forward, an unstoppable wave of humanity's might. Ava's eyes were fixed on the view screen, watching as the alien ship, once so confident and poised, now appeared strained, almost vulnerable. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the tide of the battle. But the aliens weren't done yet. Their ship, though damaged, remained a formidable opponent. The skies above the human colony were alive with the flashes of energy beams, the thrum of weapons firing in all directions. Humanity's ships darted and weaved through the chaos, showing the aliens that they could not be outmaneuvered. Every ship, every pilot, every soldier knew that this was a fight for survival. This was the moment that would determine if humanity would stand as equals in the galaxy or be crushed under the boot of an alien empire. Status report. Ava shouted into the comms. Shields holding at 70%, but we're taking heavy fire. The voice of one of the fleet commanders crackled back. We can't hold this much longer. Ava's heart raced. The aliens were adapting, just as the humans had. And now, it felt like a game of cat and mouse. The aliens were still attacking with relentless force, but they were no longer the dominant presence in the battle. Humanity's unpredictability, their sheer defiance, had unsettled them. Push forward, Ava commanded. Give them everything we've got. The fleet closed in on the alien ship, and Ava knew that this was their final chance. She turned to Colonel Hayes, whose face was grim as he stared at the rapidly approaching alien vessel. This is it, Ava, Hayes said. It's now or never. Ava took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. The lives of everyone in the fleet, the future of humanity, rested on what happened next. The stakes could not be higher. Without warning, the alien ship retaliated with a massive burst of energy, sending shockwaves through space. The human ships were thrown off course, their shields flaring as they absorbed the blast. Some ships exploded into fiery balls of light, their crews lost in an instant. But the remaining fleet regrouped, determined to finish what they had started. Ava saw the alien ship's core weakening, its power source beginning to fluctuate. This was it, the one vulnerability they had been waiting for. The alien ship was far from invincible. Just like humans, it had limits. Target the core, Ava shouted. Fire everything we have. Every ship in the fleet locked onto the alien vessel's core, firing their weapons with everything they had left. The blasts hit their mark, and the alien ship began to tremble under the onslaught. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it was enough to disable its shields. The aliens had underestimated the strength of the human resolve, and now they were paying the price. Now's our chance, Hayes yelled, his voice filled with urgency. Ava didn't need any more encouragement. She gave the order to charge, and the remaining human ships moved forward with precision, striking the alien ship with devastating accuracy. The alien ship groaned under the attack, its once pristine hull now riddled with holes. The sound of explosions echoed through the comms as the battle reached its climax. But then, a silence fell over the battlefield. The alien ship, once so menacing, was finally still. Ava held her breath. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The humans had won. The alien vessel's lights flickered one final time. And then, it powered down completely. The fleet floated in the void, exhausted but victorious. Humanity had done the impossible. They had fought back against an overwhelming alien force and had come out on top. But even as the humans celebrated, a dark realization crept into Ava's mind. This victory, as sweet as it was, came at a great cost. Many lives had been lost. Ships had been destroyed. The battle was over, but the war was far from it. Ava turned to Hayes, her expression serious. "This won't be the end of it," she said quietly. "The aliens will come again, and next time, they'll be ready." Hayes nodded solemnly. "Then we'll be ready too." Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They had proven that they would never bow down to anyone. But the real challenge was just beginning. The fight for the future of humanity was far from over. As the fleet began to regroup and head back to the colony, Ava looked out at the stars. The darkness of space stretched out before them, vast and endless. But humanity had just taken its first step toward claiming its place among the stars. And they would never look back.